Did Mama sing every day? Asked Caleb. Every single day? He sat close to the fire, his chin in his hand. It was dusk, and the dogs lay beside him on the warm hearthstones. Every single day, I told him for the second time this week, for the 20th time this month, for the 100th time this year, and the past few years. And did Papa sing too? Yes, Papa sang too. Don't get so close, Caleb, you'll heat up. He pushed his chair back. It made a hollow scraping sound on the hearthstones, and the dogs stirred. Lottie, small and black, wagged her tail and lifted her head. Nick slept on. I turned the bread dough over and over on the marble slab on the kitchen table. Well, Papa doesn't sing any more, said Caleb very softly. A log broke apart and crackled in the fireplace. He looked up at me. What did I look like when I was born? You didn't have any clothes on, I told him. I know that, he said. You looked like this. I held the bread dough up in a round pale ball. I had hair, said Caleb seriously. Not enough to talk about, I said. And she named me Caleb, he went on, filling in the old familiar story. I would have named you Troublesome, I said, making Caleb smile. And Mama handed me to you in the yellow blanket and said... He waited for me to finish the story and said... I sighed, and Mama said, Isn't he beautiful, Anna? And I was, Caleb finished. Caleb thought the story was over, and I didn't tell him what I had really thought. He was homely and plain, and he had a terrible holler and a horrid smell. But those were not the worst of him. Mama died the next morning. That was the worst thing about Caleb. Isn't he beautiful, Anna? Her last words to me. I had gone to bed thinking how wretched he looked, and I forgot to say good night. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the window. Outside, the prairie was reaching out and touched the places where the sky came down. Though winter was nearly over, there were patches of snow and ice everywhere. I looked at the long dirt road that crawled across the plains, remembering the mornings that Mama had died, cruel and sunny. They had come for her in a wagon and taken her away to be buried. And then the cousins and aunts and uncles had come and tried to fill up the house. But they couldn't. Slowly, one by one, they left, and then the days seemed long and dark, like winter days, even though it wasn't winter, and Papa didn't sing. Isn't he beautiful, Anna? No, Mama. It's hard to think of Caleb as beautiful. It took 3 whole days for me to love him, sitting in the chair by the fire, Papa washing up the supper dishes, Caleb's tiny hands brushing my cheek, and a smile. It was the smile. I know. Can you remember her songs? Asked Caleb. Mama's songs? I turned from the window. No, only that she sang about flowers and birds, sometimes about the moon at night time. Caleb reached down and touched Lottie's head. Maybe, he said, his voice low, if you remember the songs, then I might remember her too. My eyes widened and tears came. Then the door opened and wind blew in with Papa, and I went to stir the stew. Papa put his arms around me and put his nose in my hair. Nice soapy smell, that stew, he said. I laughed. That's my hair. Caleb came over and threw his arms around Papa's neck and hung down as Papa swung him back and forth, and the dog sat up. Cold in town, said Papa, and Jack was feisty. Jack was Papa's horse that he had raised from a colt. Rascal, murmured Papa, smiling, because no matter what Jack did, Papa loved him. I spooned up the stew and lighted the oil lamp, and we ate with the dogs crowded under the table, hoping for spills and handouts. Papa might not have told us about Sarah that night if Caleb hadn't asked him the question. After the dinner dishes were cleared and washed, and Papa was filling the tin pail with ashes, Caleb spoke up. It wasn't a question, really. You don't sing anymore, he said. He said it harshly, not because he meant to, but because he had been thinking about it for so long. Why? He asked more gently. Slowly, Papa straightened up. There was a long silence, and the dogs looked up, wondering at it. I've forgotten the old song, said Papa quietly. He sat down. But maybe there's a way to remember them. He looked up at us. How? Asked Caleb eagerly. Papa leaned back in the chair. I've placed an advertisement in the newspapers for help. You mean a housekeeper? I asked, surprised. Caleb and I looked at each other and burst out laughing, remembering Hilly, our old housekeeper. She was round and slow and shuffling. She snored in a high whistle at night, like a tea kettle, and let the fire go out. No, said Papa slowly, not a housekeeper. He paused. A wife. Caleb stared at Papa. A wife? You mean a mother? Nick slid his face into Papa's lap, and Papa stroked his ears. That too, said Papa, like Maggie. Matthew, our neighbor to the south, had written to ask for a wife and mother for his children, and Maggie had come from Tennessee. Her hair was the color of turnips, and she laughed. Papa reached into his pocket and unfolded a letter written on white paper. And I have received an answer. Papa read to us. Dear Mr. Jacob Whitting, I am Sarah Wheaton from Maine, as you will see from my letter. I am answering your advertisement. I have never been married, though I have been asked. I have lived with an older brother, William, who is about to be married. His wife-to-be is young and energetic. I have always loved to live by the sea, but at this time I feel a move is necessary, and the truth is the sea is as far east as I can go. My choice, as you can see, is limited. This should not be taken as an insult. I am strong and I work hard and I am willing to travel. But I am not mild-mannered. If you should care to write, I would be interested in your children and about where you live. And you. Yours very truly, Sarah Elizabeth Wheaton. P.S. Do you have opinions on cats? I have one. No one spoke when Papa finished the letter. He kept looking at it in his hands, reading it over to himself. Finally, I turned my head a bit to sneak a look at Caleb. He was smiling. I smiled too. One thing, I said in the quiet of the room. What's that? Asked Papa, looking up. I put my arm around Caleb. Ask her if she sings, I said.
This is homework for Sarah Plain and Tall, Chapter 1. I want you to provide written answers to the questions in this homework. Each of your answers should include the following. First, it should be at least 8 words long. Secondly, it should use one of the irregular verbs in the list provided at the end, a different one in each sentence. 3, it should use 2 vocabulary words from the list given below, given at the end. So here are the first questions of the first set of questions. What do you know about Caleb's mother? What important information don't you know about Caleb's mother? Number 3, write something about the animals in this family. Number 4, tell what Anna thought about Caleb when he was first born. Number 5, tell what Anna thinks about Caleb now as she tells the story. Number 6, how do you know that the children respect their father? Number 7, what kinds of animals do Caleb and Anna have? Number 8, which of these animals are pets and which ones are farm animals? Number 9, what did Anna say Caleb looked like when he was first born? And number 10 of the first homework, what time of year does this story take place? Now the second set of homework questions for Chapter 1. Write something about singing in this family. What did Caleb's mother sing about? Who did the caulking and what did they make? Describe Jacob's favorite horse. How did Caleb get his father to talk about the letter he had received? What was in the newspaper advertisement Jacob Witter placed? What was the old housekeeper like? Why did Maggie come from Tennessee? How did Sarah describe herself in her letter to Jacob? Who was smiling about the letter, and why were they smiling? This is the list of irregular verbs that you need to learn for grammar. You should know most of these words already. The difficult part is to know the past tenses, the past simple and the past continuous. They are not regular. They don't end in ed. You have to learn each one separately, although they are kind of systematic. So please use one of the past tenses, either the past continuous or the past simple, in each sentence. For instance, if you choose the word buy, then you say, he bought some bread. If you choose the word drive, you choose, he had driven that day to the store. If you choose have, you can say, he had had a hard day. If you choose see, you can say, he had seen a ghost, or thought he had. So that's the kind of example for how to use these irregular verbs. There are 2 pages of vocabulary. This is the first one that appear in Chapter 1. You probably know more than half of these words already, but I'm including them just to make sure. You can expect that these words will be on the vocabulary test, so please take a look. I would recommend that you stop your computer and do a print screen. Once again, my recommendation, stop your computer and do a print screen so you have a printed copy of these words to study. I don't think looking at them on the screen like this is the best way to study. And this is the second part of the new vocabulary. That's all in Chapter 1. the numbers that you see are the page numbers where they first show up. That's important. As you're learning the word, you should see it in context. In context means look at it in the sentence where it is used, and you will get a better feeling for what it means. For instance, harshly. He spoke harshly. That means he spoke rather stragly. But look at it in the sentence and you'll have a better understanding. So all of these words are likely to appear on vocabulary tests. You know how I do vocabulary tests. Not everybody gets tested on every word all the time, but I choose the words at random, so you'd better study them all because you don't know which ones will be there. And you do know that every student in the class is going to get tested on different words.